as we make our cuts, as we're working for any tools for that matter, the best practice is to wear your safety glasses. So I wear bifocals now, and I have some, many of you will know what I mean when I say BC glasses. And so these are my safety glasses. They have side guards, and we'll make our cut using our safety glasses. I have removed the guards from the blades, and now the teeth are exposed on both sides of this blade. And now we will go to make our cut. I'm actually going to use the finer set teeth to get my cut started. And I'll tell you what, why don't you experiment? I will say this, to get your cut started on this particular cut, the finer teeth will be better, but then you can experiment to see which of the edges of this blade are best for making this rip cut. So starting is the hardest and most crucial part, and it's at this point when you have the blade here on the edge that the blade can feel unwieldy. You know, it can turn. So do your best to steady it with the thumb of your offhand. So what you can do is put your thumb up here and be above the cutting teeth and just steady the blade. You're not pressing on the blade, you're just keeping it from wobbling so much. Now in the process, the blade width, this wide blade here, will actually help guide the cutting edge and keep you on track as you're making the cut. But it means you need to establish a good track from the get-go. And so we're going to start off very slow at first. So what I want to do is pull my saw downward in the cut, close to a 45-degree angle. The guiding principle then would only be to advance the saw down a line you can see. So my first cut will be along the corner here, and I'm going to cut until the blade reaches this tip over here, because that's the last point I can see, and some point then along the face of this board. I'm cutting where the X's are on the X side of my line. And so I'm going to get started here. I'm going to move my hand out of the way now. And again, I'm looking at my line down the face and on this top edge. This is why we connected the line along the top edge. So I have my saw started. Now this blade is very wobbly. But again, if you control this blade and just be gentle, pull straight up and down, or pull in a straight motion, not straight up and down. You can guide the saw edge along the lines, the line on the edge and the line on the end, and you can make your cut. As you get into your cut, you may discover that either the saw blade along the top edge of your board or the saw blade along the face of your board is a little off. What you can do then at that point is rotate the saw along that line that you're having trouble with and just gently apply lateral pressure to the saw and let the teeth then ease it back on track. Don't try to twist the saw within the cut. All you'll do there is bend the blade, and the only time that's useful is at the very top of your cut where you're trying to establish the cut. So once you're in the groove, so to speak, or the track, just lateral pressure one way or the other to adjust the saw. Now we're going to saw at this angle until we reach the far corner. And at that point, we'll stop and we'll turn the board around. Now at this point I'm going to stop because the blade has reached that edge there and I can no longer see a line to cut along. I've cut through the line that I can see. I can still see the line along this face, but I need to be able to see the line at both ends of the cut. So now what we do to make sure that we get a straight line, we put our saw down and I'll release pressure on my clamp. And then I want to take the board and I want to rotate it or spin it, if you will, so that now the face with the mark that I have not cut yet is facing me, and where I have cut is now opposite me. We'll pick our saw back up, and now, so when we've flipped the board, let's remember that our X is on the opposite side of where we started, so we have to reorient our thinking to be able to make this cut. So we will start back at the corner, just like we did from the beginning. And within a couple of strokes, you're just cutting through a tip now on your board. Within a couple of strokes from the new side, the saw will fall into its track. And then you simply keep going until you bottom out in the first cut. So whereas our first cut went to this corner of our board, this second cut will actually go all the way down to the tip of where the first cut stopped on the other side. And this side will be lower. And so we'll keep flipping our board back and forth, continuing to make our cut through the length of the board. And a couple other tips as we're talking about use of the saw. Again, don't race with the saw. Don't force the saw into the cut. You shouldn't be pushing down on the saw. Secondly, you want to use the full length of the blade with purposeful strokes. So we're not doing this using just 1 inch of those teeth. Use the full length of the blade and make your strokes count. Don't grip too hard on your saw handle and don't bear down on anything. You don't need to do that. Take a relaxed pace and let the saw do the work. This job should not wear you out, making a rip cut through the board. And again, you have to do 4 of these boards. So it's going to take some time. It's going to take a little effort, but it should not wear you out. Learn to let up a little bit on the return stroke. So this is what's called a pull saw. So it's cutting on the pull stroke. So whenever you return the saw back up to the top of the stroke, relax a little bit, let it lift just a little bit. Now, at the beginning when you're getting used to it, you'll lift it out and that's fine. You'll learn and you'll gather a rhythm. If the saw starts to drift, it'll happen slowly. So you do have time to course correct. That's why you need to be focusing on the line at all time. And again, I've said it before, don't twist the saw in the cut. Just use a little bit of lateral pressure, whichever direction you need, to push the board, or the saw rather, back closer to the line in the cut. But if you're paying attention, you shouldn't drift that far. And again, the cut that you've already made serves as a track for the saw blade to fall into as we make our cut. It's okay to use both hands to help guide the saw. So at this point, we've made our second cut on the board, and I'm further down on the face that's nearest me, and you can see that on the opposing side, which was my first face to cut, my blade has reached the bottom of my initial cut. So now I have a cut through the board that's at an angle like this. I will flip the board around again, and I will continue my cut. saw falls into the track that I've already made. And again, I'm keeping in mind now that I have flipped the board back around, my saw blade will be on the original side of my line. And so I will continue this cut down until this edge of the blade reaches the bottom of my second cut. Okay, now at this point, I have bottomed out now on the opposing face of my cut. I'm lower on the face that's nearest me, and I can flip the board again and continue my cut. Now, as I do this, I obviously need to readjust my clamp at a lower position. This makes the top of the board stick out further. One thing that you can do is take pieces of paper or a piece of paper, fold it several times so that it becomes the thickness of your saw kerf. And once you get a little bit further down, you can put a second clamp up at the top, as long as you don't pinch the blade with the board that you're cutting. And to do that, you would have a shim of something, as I said, maybe some paper. And that can help you secure the board for the rest of your cut. So we will continue to do this. You may be saying to yourself, man, this takes a long time. This is a lot of effort. I do want to say that this is building your skills as a woodworker, learning to use a handsaw. Many people cannot or do not choose to not use handsaws in this day and age, and that's fine. But to be able to do this and to be able to use this tool and to be able to make something with your hand is very valuable, and you will have great respect for this cutting board when you finish this project. So you continue working on making your cut, and after we've got all 4 of our boards cut, then we can talk about assembly.